Here's some incredible footage of something you never see after a major sporting event. Thousands of fans voluntarily staying behind to clean the stadium. These spectators had just finished watching Japan play, but instead of heading for the exits, many remained in the stands collecting trash and wiping down their sections. The tradition is deeply rooted in Japanese culture, where cleaning shared spaces is often viewed as a basic responsibility and a sign of respect for others. In Japan, many students even help clean their own schools instead of relying on janitors. The result is scenes like this, where entire sections of a packed stadium are left looking almost untouched long after the final whistle. Here's a rare look at one of the most elusive underwater creatures on Earth. Captured more than 5,000 feet beneath the ocean's surface near an offshore oil rig, this giant deep Scarier jellyfish looks less like a real animal and more like something straight out of a horror movie. Its enormous translucent body and dark ghostly appearance have led many people to compare it to a Dementor from Harry Potter. Unlike most jellyfish, deep Scarier lacks long tentacles and instead uses its massive bell as a living net, wrapping itself around prey in the darkness of the deep sea. Because they inhabit some of the most inaccessible regions of the ocean, sightings are extremely rare, and scientists still know surprisingly little about how these mysterious animals live and reproduce. Jerry, better known online as Gazelle Beauty, was born with megalocornea, an extremely rare genetic disorder that causes the corneas to grow far larger than usual. The condition gave Jerry unusually large eyes from birth, leading many childhood photos to go viral because of their unsettling appearance. While often mistaken for a cosmetic trait, megalocornea is a lifelong medical condition that can be associated with vision problems, light sensitivity, and an increased risk of serious eye complications later on in life. The disorder is so rare that very few doctors will ever encounter a patient with it during their entire careers. In 2024, 26-year-old American YouTuber Elliot Eastman repeatedly told his audience he feared armed men would come for him while living in a conflict-prone region of the Philippines. After marrying a local woman and openly documenting his life, income, and whereabouts online, Eastman randomly ended one of his live streams without saying goodbye. Roughly 2 hours later, armed men reportedly arrived at his home, shot him, and abducted him by boat. Despite extensive searches, his body was never recovered, leaving his ultimate fate officially unsolved but widely presumed fatal. This was the horrifying moment a little Chinese girl realized that escalators are not toys. Somehow the child ended up hanging from the outside of an escalator, gripping the moving handrail as it carried her higher and higher above the floor. Unable to pull herself up or climb back down, she was dragged all the way to the top where her body became wedged against a glass barrier. As the escalator continued moving, the handrail kept pulling on her arms, leaving her completely trapped and dangling helplessly above the drop. Luckily, before anything bad could happen, 2 men rushed over, grabbed the girl, and pulled her to safety. Escalator accidents may seem rare, but falls, entrapments, and mechanical incidents have caused serious injuries and deaths around the world. This was the moment a woman instantly disappeared beneath the sidewalk. After getting off a motorcycle taxi in Brazil, she stepped onto what appeared to be a normal manhole cover. Instead, the cover suddenly gave way beneath her, sending her plunging to the hole below. The fall happened so quickly that she barely had time to react, and found herself immediately trapped in the shaft with murky water up to her chest. Luckily, a shocked bystander saw her fall in and ran over to the rescue. She survived with moderate injuries and was eventually pulled from the hole by people nearby. Investigators later determined that 2 men attempted to steal the cover earlier that morning and failed to put it back securely. Though incidents like this are rare, manhole falls can be deadly. Just weeks earlier, a 56-year-old grandma in New York was killed this exact way. In Maryland Heights, Missouri, 28-year-old Danielle Uskovich was attending the Point Fest Rock Festival when she was accidentally kicked in the head by a crowd surfer during a performance by the band Sleep Theory. At first, she thought she had only suffered a minor injury, but days later she developed severe headaches and was rushed to the hospital where doctors discovered a brain bleed. Danielle subsequently suffered 2 strokes, underwent emergency surgery to remove multiple blood clots and a large amount of blood from her skull, and was placed into a medically induced coma. Despite doctors' efforts, she died 10 days after the incident, just months before her planned wedding. In Poland, a 35-year-old man was recently rushed to the hospital after using an axe to sever part of his own genitals in what he reportedly described as an attempt to eliminate his sexual urges. Emergency responders found him suffering from catastrophic blood loss, and surgeons spent hours performing emergency reconstructive surgery to save his life. Doctors later said the injury carried a high risk of fatal hemorrhaging and permanent complications. Scientists created this eerie ghost heart by stripping a real heart of every living cell, washing away the blood, tissue, and DNA until only a translucent white protein scaffold remained. Researchers can now inject the empty structure with stem cells in hopes of growing a functioning replacement organ that the body may eventually recognize as its own. Horses have almost no muscle below their knees, meaning their lower legs rely heavily on movement to circulate blood. Because of this, their hooves essentially act as second hearts, helping pump blood back up the leg every time they walk. If a horse becomes unable to stand or move after a serious leg injury, blood flow can fail, causing tissue damage and breakdown that can slowly spread upward from the hoof. This is one reason why severe leg injuries is often fatal in horses. In 1979, 6-year-old Ethan Pates disappeared after convincing his parents to let him walk alone to his Manhattan school bus stop for the first time. He never made it onto the bus, and his case became one of the most infamous child disappearances in U.S. history after his photo became the first ever printed on milk cartons nationwide. Ethan's body was never found, but in 2017, former convenience store worker Pedro Hernandez was convicted of kidnapping and murdering him nearly 38 years later. Hernandez confessed to luring Ethan into a basement with the promise of a soda before strangling him. But his defense argued he suffered from severe mental illness and gave a false confession. He was ultimately sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. This photo was taken at the exact moment a phone began shutting down because of low battery. As the device lost power, the camera glitched mid-processing and partially corrupted the image, creating a distorted frame that looks more like a horror game render than a real photograph. This young snow leopard was caught reacting to the sound of a hidden camera trap deep in the mountains. The first image shows the rare predator calmly staring into the lens, but seconds later it appeared to snarl after hearing the camera click. Snow leopards are so elusive they're often called the ghosts of the mountains, and many researchers spend years studying them without ever seeing one in person. Lahaina Noon is a rare solar event where an entire city briefly loses its shadows, making the world look like a video game before everything renders. It happens twice a year in tropical regions like Hawaii, when the sun passes directly overhead at a perfect 90-degree angle, so buildings, objects, and people appear eerily flat as if reality itself hasn't fully rendered yet. Fishermen off the coast of Costa Rica caught something scientists had never documented before, an orange nurse shark. Researchers later confirmed the shark had an extremely rare pigmentation condition called xanthism, combined with traits of albinism, giving it its bright yellow-orange color. Nurse sharks normally rely on dark brown skin to camouflage against the sea floor, making this shark stand out so much that many people initially thought the photos were AI. This was the moment a man begged for his life after becoming trapped inside a white tiger enclosure at a zoo in New Delhi, India. After reportedly crossing a safety barrier and falling 18 feet into a moat surrounding the exhibit, 20-year-old Maksud backed himself against a wall as a massive white tiger named Vijay slowly approached him. Witnesses watched in horror as the terrified man put his hands together in a pleading gesture and begged to be spared while the tiger stood just inches away, appearing to contemplate what to do. For several minutes, the animal appeared strangely calm while crowds of people screamed and threw rocks in a desperate attempt to distract it. But the commotion eventually agitated the tiger, which suddenly lunged at Maksud, grabbed him by the neck, and dragged him across the enclosure in front of horrified visitors. By the time zoo staff regained control of the situation, the 20-year-old man had already died from catastrophic neck injuries and suffocation. Vijay was not killed afterward, with zoo officials stating the tiger had simply acted on instinct after a person entered his enclosure. This eerie burial suit from China's Liao dynasty was made between the 10th and 11th centuries, using woven silver wire, a bronze mask, and a metal crown to encase the dead. Elite members of the dynasty were sometimes buried in elaborate metal suits like this, because it was believed they could help preserve the body and protect the soul in the afterlife. A 700-year-old statue of the Hindu god Ganesha sits perched on top of Indonesia's active Mount Bromo volcano, where it has overlooked smoke, ash, and eruptions for centuries, as part of a sacred ancient site used by local Tenggerese worshippers. In 2024, researchers using LiDAR scans in Ecuador's Upano Valley revealed the hidden remains of a massive 2,500-year-old civilization buried beneath the Amazon rainforest, including huge networks of roads, plazas, homes, and agricultural structures that had remained completely concealed under dense jungle for centuries. Archaeologists say the site is so enormous that only a small portion has been studied so far, and future excavations could uncover far more about the lost civilization and how millions of people may have once lived deep within the Amazon. In 2019, a man in rural Australia was gored to death by his own pet deer, an animal he had raised for years. It happened during mating season, when even normally tame stags can turn violently territorial. The deer charged without warning, slamming its antlers into him repeatedly and fatally wounding him. When his wife ran over to help, the animal attacked her too, leaving her critically injured before police shot it dead. Deer attacks are extremely rare, but during rutting season, even a beloved pet can turn into a deadly threat. In 2010, at Vortex Spring in Florida, 30-year-old Ben McDaniel entered the site's underwater cave system alone. The cave is known for tight, winding passages that require specialized training. McDaniel apparently went past safety restrictions into deeper sections and never resurfaced. Days later, his scuba tanks were found inside the caves, but despite multiple recovery attempts, his body has never been located. His disappearance remains unsolved, as he likely became trapped deep within the cave system, essentially swallowed by the cave itself, where recovery is impossible. This was the moment an MMA fighter was forced to face off against an aggressive dog. When a large unleashed pit bull suddenly charges straight at him, he reacts quickly, putting the dog in a headlock while keeping its jaws away from his face and neck. He stays calm the entire time, controlling the dog's movement on the ground like he's in a match. Luckily, the dog had a weak ground game. A few seconds later, the owner finally shows up and manages to control his massive dog. The guy walks away completely unscathed, and it's pretty clear his wrestling background is the only reason this didn't end much worse. In 2024 in Minnesota, an 18-year-old driver reported that his Honda Pilot began accelerating on its own and wouldn't slow down, even when he used the brakes and emergency brake. The SUV reached speeds over 110 miles per hour and continued for over 20 minutes, crossing into North Dakota while the driver remained on the phone with 911. As he was approaching a dead end, authorities coordinated a controlled intervention, using police vehicles to safely bring the SUV to a stop without a high-speed crash. Miraculously, the driver was not seriously injured, and the incident ended without any fatalities, though the cause of the malfunction has never been determined. In Addo Elephant National Park, South Africa, a lioness named Josie went blind around age 12, likely from untreated eye disease such as cataracts or glaucoma. In the wild, that's almost always a death sentence, since lionesses rely on vision to hunt and avoid threats. But instead of abandoning her, her two adult daughters stayed by her side for the next 5 years. They guided her using contact calls, flanked her while moving so she wouldn't walk into danger, and shared their kills so she could eat despite being unable to hunt. Thanks to her daughters, she survived like this until about age 17, which is already near the upper limit of a wild lion's lifespan. 2008, on a beach in Montauk, Long Island, New York, a bloated, hairless carcass washed ashore with no clear identifying features, quickly dubbed the Montauk Monster. The body was already in an advanced state of decomposition, likely causing the loss of fur and the distorted shape of the head and limbs. As photos spread online, some speculated it was an escaped or discarded experiment from the nearby Plum Island, home to a government animal disease research facility, or something connected to rumored labs in Montauk. Wildlife experts said it was most likely a raccoon or dog altered by decay and water exposure, which can strip fur and change how the skull appears. No official identification was ever confirmed, and the body disappeared shortly after being photographed, leaving the Montauk Monster unresolved and open to speculation. This is the sunburst appearance of osteosarcoma, the most common form of bone cancer. The pattern forms when the tumor grows so aggressively that it forces new bone to shoot outward in sharp radiating spikes. It's most often seen in teenagers and young adults, typically in long bones like the femur near the knee. As it advances, the cancer can hollow out and weaken the bone from the inside, leading to intense pain, swelling, and sometimes sudden fractures under normal pressure. Even with treatment, it can quickly spread to the lungs, making it a particularly fast-moving and devastating disease. In 1974 in Memphis, R&B singer Al Green was attacked by his girlfriend Mary Woodson after he refused to marry her. As he was getting ready for bed, she poured a pot of boiling grits all over him, leaving him with severe second-degree burns across his torso. He reportedly ran through the house screaming in pain before collapsing. Moments later, Woodson locked herself in another room and turned the gun on herself. Green survived but required extensive recovery, and the incident became one of the most disturbing and defining moments of his life. Proof that animals are evolving, Part 16. A 34-year-old orangutan at the Metro Richmond Zoo in Virginia named Patrick was given a royal cloak for his birthday, and without any training, he tied it around himself like a wearable outfit. Orangutans are already known for advanced problem solving and tool use, but moments like this show just how far that intelligence can go. Instead of playing with it, Patrick used the fabric with a clear purpose. It's a small moment, but it highlights the level of cognitive ability orangutans are capable of. This orb weaver spider had nowhere to attach the bottom of its web, so it made its own anchor. With no stable point to build from, it picked up a small rock and used it to hold the entire structure together. Orb weavers are known for their precise, almost mechanical construction, but this goes beyond instinct. It shows they can adjust their strategy when conditions change, solving problems in real time. In this case, the spider effectively created a solution to the missing piece of its environment, creatively allowing it to hunt in a place it otherwise couldn't have. In August of 2023 in Maceió, Brazil, 27-year-old Fernanda Silva Veloz de Cruz Pinto accepted a piece of chocolate from an elderly fortune teller who had just warned her she only had a few days left to live. Trusting it because it was sealed and fearing for her life, she ate it. Then within hours began vomiting, losing vision, and texting family members about a bitter taste and racing heart. She was rushed to the hospital but died in agonizing pain the next day. Toxicology later found high levels of pesticides in her body, and police investigated whether the chocolate had been deliberately poisoned, but the case remains unresolved. In 1987, in Cameron Highlands, Malaysia, Sultan Iskandar of Johor, who later became King of Malaysia, was accused of beating a golf caddy to death after the man allegedly laughed at a bad shot. At the time, Malaysian rulers had legal immunity, so no charges were brought despite public outrage. The incident became one of several controversies that led to the country stripping its royalty of immunity in 1993, allowing future rulers to be prosecuted like ordinary citizens. Seattle artist Sunday Nobody spent $25,000 creating a bronze statue combining the ancient Greek Discobolus with the face of handsome Squidward. He consulted archaeologists to ensure it could withstand long-term underwater conditions, then deliberately sank it about 9 meters deep in the Mediterranean Sea so it could potentially be discovered in the future as a convincing artifact. This executioner's sword from the late 17th century Germany was engraved with the words, "When I raise this sword, so I wish that this poor sinner will receive eternal life." The Creel Mound in what is now West Virginia, built around 250 BC by the Adena culture, contained a central burial surrounded by multiple skeletons arranged in a circle, with their feet pointed toward the body in the middle. Archaeologists believe the positioning suggests a ritual burial, possibly involving individuals placed around a high-status figure, though the exact circumstances remain unclear. The Celtic carnix was an ancient war horn used by Celtic tribes between 300 BC and 200 AD. It was a long, vertical bronze instrument, often shaped with an animal head at the top, designed to project intimidating sounds across the battlefield. Moments before combat, its eerie, haunting blasts would echo through the air, one of the last sounds Roman soldiers heard before facing their enemies. In Gainesville, Georgia, a group of high school students decided to prank their math teacher by toilet papering his yard late at night. When 40-year-old teacher and golf coach Jason Hughes ran outside, he was reportedly joking around and pretending to catch them in the act as they ran back to their car. But as the teens tried to speed away, Hughes slipped on the wet pavement and fell into the road. One of the students, an 18-year-old driving a pickup truck, accidentally ran him over. Hughes was rushed to the hospital but tragically died from his injuries. The driver was initially charged with first-degree vehicular homicide, while several other students were arrested for trespassing and littering. But Hughes's family later asked prosecutors to drop the charges, saying the beloved teacher cared deeply about his students and never would have wanted any of their lives destroyed over a prank. This was the moment drivers on a highway in San Antonio, Texas realized something was seriously wrong with the man behind a drifting SUV. Recognizing a medical emergency, 29-year-old Rene Valerio Albi pulled his truck in front of the SUV and gradually slowed down, allowing the runaway vehicle to bump into his bumper until both eventually came to a stop. The driver had suffered a heart attack, and a nurse who stopped at the scene began administering CPR, helping to revive him until paramedics arrived. Doctors said he's expected to make a full recovery thanks to the quick actions of a few strangers. Here's an insane clip of a man narrowly avoiding a horrific death by elevator. Commenters pointed out that he's lucky enough he didn't get crushed, but he also could have easily fallen down the shaft once the elevator moved. Here's a horrifying scene as tourists desperately flee an erupting Mount Etna in Sicily, as thick plumes of ash and smoke rise behind them. Mount Etna is Europe's most active volcano and one of the most active in the world, erupting frequently as magma constantly pushes toward the surface beneath the mountain. Despite its constant activity, most eruptions involve slow-moving ash plumes that give people enough time to evacuate. Deaths from this volcano are extremely rare in modern times, though hikers and tourists have occasionally been injured after getting too close to active craters. This video shows a dolphin playing with a pufferfish, nudging and rolling it around in the water. When threatened, pufferfish release a powerful tetrodotoxin, deadly in high doses but may produce a mild narcotic effect in small amounts. Researchers believe dolphins sometimes provoke the fish just enough to trigger a small release of the toxin before lingering near the surface in a calm, almost trance-like state, highlighting the high intelligence of these creatures and how this intoxication-seeking behavior appears strikingly similar to humans. This cat seems to know exactly how to get its owner's attention, using the door knocker knowing that it's loud enough for the person inside to hear. For the first time on record, scientists documented a wild orangutan deliberately treating his own injury using a medicinal plant. In 2022, a male orangutan named Rakis was observed with an open facial wound, after which he selected leaves from a plant known for its anti-inflammatory properties, chewed them into a pulp, and carefully applied the juice directly onto the wound. He then pressed the leftover plant matter over the injury, effectively forming a crude bandage. Researchers noted the wound healed perfectly without signs of infection, marking the first confirmed case of a wild non-human animal independently performing a multi-step medical treatment on itself. This is why you should never dump your pet goldfish in the wild. A goldfish weighing 30 kilograms, about 67 pounds, was pulled from a lake in France after growing to an enormous size. Goldfish can reproduce rapidly, creating entire populations of invasive fish that overwhelm local ecosystems. Some lakes have reported thousands of them multiplying beneath the surface, unseen until the damage is already done. Without natural predators and with endless food, they grow to ridiculous sizes, churn up lake beds, rip out vegetation, cloud the water, and slowly suffocate native wildlife. In 2002, Washington State mother Lydia Fairchild nearly lost custody of her own children after DNA tests appeared to prove she wasn't biologically related to them. She had applied for public assistance, and routine genetic testing showed her DNA did not match the children she had given birth to, raising suspicions of fraud. After multiple failed maternity tests, doctors discovered she was an extremely rare human chimera, meaning she had absorbed her twin in the womb and carried two distinct sets of DNA in her body. Her reproductive organs contained different genetic material than the rest of her tissues, which is why standard DNA testing falsely suggested she wasn't their mother. Here's some insanely rare footage of a siphonophore, a deep-sea colony that looks more like an alien or sea creature than anything from Earth. Even though they appear to be a single creature, they're actually colonies made up of thousands of tiny bodies called zooids, each assigned a specific role like feeding, reproduction, or movement. Some species can grow longer than a blue whale, trailing glowing tentacles through the dark to sting and capture prey. Because they're extremely delicate and live thousands of feet below the surface, clear footage of siphonophores in their natural environment is rarely captured. Here's some footage of the only volcano in the world famous for its blue lava, Indonesia's Kawah Ijen. What you're seeing isn't actually blue molten rock, but sulfuric gas is igniting as they escape the crater, creating electric blue flames that can flow down the slope like liquid fire at night. The effect is only visible in darkness, which is why most clips are filmed after sunset. Miners still descend into the crater through toxic fumes to collect sulfur, working inside one of the most extreme volcanic environments on Earth. This was the moment a couple of drunk fishermen spotted a floating whale carcass and thought it would be a good idea to climb on top of it. What they didn't realize is that they were sitting on skin that was already soft and tearing apart, meaning they easily could have fallen straight through and into the whale's guts. Once inside, the collapsing flesh and toxic gases could trap them, suffocate them, or crush them before anyone could help. Additionally, a dead whale is basically a massive rotting pressure tank. As the body decomposes, bacteria inside release huge amounts of methane and other gases that stretch the skin like a balloon. Even a small shift in weight or a tiny puncture can make the entire thing rupture. And this isn't just disturbing or gross, but can even be deadly. In 2013, a dead sperm whale in the Faroe Islands exploded after someone cut into it, killing a man who was standing nearby. In Taiwan in 2004, a whale carcass detonated while being transported through a city, injuring dozens and covering streets in blood and organs. And in Oregon in 1970, officials tried to blow up a beached whale with dynamite, launching massive chunks of blubber hundreds of feet, destroying several cars, and nearly killing spectators. This was the moment an Indonesian conservationist broke down in tears after finally witnessing one of the rarest flowers on Earth bloom. After searching the rainforests of Sumatra for 13 years, Diki Andriki and his team found a Rafflesia, a parasitic flower often nicknamed a corpse flower because it releases a powerful odor of rotting flesh to attract insects. The plant spends most of its life hidden inside a host vine and only blooms for a few days, making sightings incredibly rare as researchers never even see one in their lifetime. When the massive, foul-smelling flower began to open in front of him, the weight of more than a decade of dangerous jungle expeditions and failed searches finally hit. This is one of the rarest atmospheric events ever caught on video. Upward lightning erupting from the summit of Volcán de Agua in Guatemala. The bolts appear to tear straight out of the volcano, making it look less like weather and more like something unnatural unfolding in real time. Unlike normal lightning that strikes downward from clouds, this phenomenon shoots upward from the ground into the storm above, triggered by intense electrical imbalance. It's so uncommon that storm chasers never even see it once in their lifetime, and it's almost never captured this clearly over a populated city. Kim Kardashian's 2018 Met Gala photo, taken in front of the gilded coffin of Nedja Monk, caught the attention of the Manhattan DA's Antiquities Trafficking Unit. When investigators looked into the artifact's paperwork, they discovered the export documents were forged and the coffin had actually been looted from Egypt in 2011. The viral photo helped trigger the investigation that ultimately exposed the trafficking network and led to the coffin being returned to Egypt in 2019. When Yoshitaro Shibasaki and his team scaled Mount Tsurugi in 1907, believed at the time to be Japan's final unclimbed peak, they were stunned to find ancient relics already waiting at the summit. A decorative metal staff fitting and a sword were discovered near the top, and later analysis revealed they'd been placed there over 1,000 years earlier. This 250-year-old mechanical swan still glides and bends its neck as if it were still alive. Built in 1773 by master showman James Cox and ingenious inventor John Joseph Merlin, the automaton uses hundreds of hidden clockwork components to make the bird preen, ripple the water below it, and even snatch a silver fish from the stream. In 1835, a man digging a duck pond in Margate, England, accidentally discovered the Shell Grotto, an underground chalk passage decorated with about 4.6 million seashells arranged across 2,000 square feet of mosaic. Most of the shells, mussels, oysters, scallops, etc., appear to have been collected from nearby Kent beaches, though some are foreign species. Its age, purpose, and creators remain completely unknown. On November 10, 1975, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, one of the largest freighters to ever sail the Great Lakes, vanished without a single distress call. She was hauling 26,000 tons of iron ore across Lake Superior, a route sailors today still call the graveyard of the Great Lakes. As a brutal storm ripped across the lake, wind gusts reached hurricane force and waves rose over 30 feet. Nearby ships radioed that the Fitzgerald was taking whitewater over the deck, and her radar was down, vents smashed, and one of her lifeboats already torn apart by the waves. At 7:10 p.m., Captain Ernest McSorley made his final transmission. "We are holding our own." Minutes later, the 729-foot ship dropped off radar completely. When search teams managed to locate the wreck 2 days later, the bow was found buried more than 20 feet into the lake bed, showing how quick the ship plummeted through the water. The crew quarters were crushed flat, showing how violently the ship hit the bottom. So fast, the men never even reached their emergency stations. Divers later found crew hard hats still sitting neatly in their storage racks. All 29 crew members were lost, as not a single body was ever recovered. While the exact cause of the sinking still remains a mystery, many experts believe the Fitzgerald was struck by a rare Three Sisters, a set of massive rogue waves that can swallow a vessel in seconds, snapping the large ship in two and sending all 29 men to their graves 530 feet below the surface. In 1995, divers retrieved the ship's bell, the only piece ever brought to the surface, and replaced it with a memorial bell engraved with all 29 names. Every November 10th, it's rung 29 times, one toll for each life lost. The rarest videos ever taken, Part 1. Here's some extremely rare footage of a deep-sea serrate octopus drifting across the ocean floor like a ghost. Its body inflates and deflates like a balloon, each pulse a mix of breath and buoyancy. These fragile creatures live miles below the surface, as every confirmed sighting is considered a major scientific event. Recorded in 1899, the little girl and her cat is believed to be the world's first cat video, filmed by British pioneer Arthur Melbourne Cooper. The short clip shows a girl playing with her cat, now colorized and speed corrected. A rare glimpse into how even over a century ago, humans couldn't resist capturing the simple joy of a cat's affection. Here's a clip showing how a laser can easily destroy the camera on your phone. Those lines are irreversible as the sensor is now permanently damaged. Lahaina Noon is a rare solar event where an entire city briefly loses its shadows, making the world look like a video game before it's fully loaded. It happens twice a year in tropical regions like Hawaii when the sun passes directly overhead at a perfect 90-degree angle, so objects, trees, buildings, and people appear eerily flat as if reality itself hasn't fully rendered yet. This 15th century Italian painting is the earliest known depiction of the guinea worm, an awful parasite that has haunted humans for thousands of years. It enters the system through dirty water containing its larva, and grows into a 3-foot-long worm that eventually erupts from the skin, causing an incredibly painful burning sensation. To relieve this, people often splash water onto the affected area, prompting the worm to discharge more larvae into the person's body and start the horrible cycle all over again. There were more than 3.5 million guinea worm cases in 1986, but that number has been significantly reduced in recent years. Armed only with a knife, Master Sergeant Roy Benavides went to assist a 12-man Special Forces team who were surrounded by 1,000 Vietnamese soldiers during the Vietnam War. Following the grueling 6-hour battle, Benavides had 37 puncture wounds, exposed intestines, and a broken jaw. He was pronounced dead until he managed to spit blood in the face of the man who was zipping up his body bag. Benavides eventually made a full recovery and was awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroic actions. In the year 2000, 11-year-old Candace Newmaker died during an extreme therapy session in Colorado. The adopted girl was undergoing attachment therapy when 4 unlicensed therapists decided to perform the controversial treatment known as rebirthing. She was wrapped in a flannel sheet and covered with pillows to represent a womb and was told to fight her way out of it, with the apparent expectation that this would help her attach to her adoptive mother. All 4 therapists used their body weight to push down on Candace and resist her attempts to free herself. Candace screamed several times that she couldn't breathe and was gonna die, and even started to vomit, but was simply called a quitter by one of the therapists. 40 minutes into the session, Candace was asked if she was ready to be reborn, to which she faintly responded no, which would be her last word before she died of asphyxiation. All 4 fake therapists were prosecuted, 2 of whom were sentenced to 16 years in prison after the disturbing footage was shown in court. In March of 1989, Texas college student Mark Kilroy went missing while vacationing for spring break just across the Mexican border. An extensive search took place that quickly turned dark when investigators discovered that Kilroy had been kidnapped by a drug cult that believed human sacrifices would protect their operations from law enforcement. On the cult's ranch, they found 16 bodies, including Kilroy's, that had been sacrificed in occult ceremonies. The student had been tortured, sodomized, and killed with a machete during a sacrificial ritual, after which his brain and spine were removed from his body. The cult's leader evaded capture by taking his own life, but 14 others were prosecuted for their heinous crimes. After George Harrison of the Beatles died from brain and lung cancer in 2001, his widow sued one of the doctors at the hospital where George received his radiation therapy. The man allegedly forced him to listen to his son play guitar and autograph the guitar while George was barely coherent in his final days. In 2020, Costco stopped selling Chowco coconut milk after its manufacturer was accused of using forced monkey labor. Groups of chained-up macaques were allegedly forced to pick coconuts and had their teeth pulled if they tried to resist. Costco halted purchases and demanded audits from the Thailand-based company to ensure humane practices. In 2010, 55-year-old Greg Flanagan was found dead on the floor inside of his locked hotel room in Texas. There were no signs of a break-in or robbery, as Greg's wallet was still in his back pocket with cash inside. He had suffered no obvious external injuries, but had massive internal damage, including broken ribs, damage to his liver and intestines, and a hole through his heart. Flanagan's death was soon ruled an unsolved homicide, despite coroners having no idea what actually happened to him. After an 8-month investigation, it was revealed that he died from a 1-in-a-million series of events. A drunk guest in the next hotel room accidentally fired a single bullet through the wall while playing with his pistol. While Flanagan was laying down watching Iron Man 2, the bullet hit him directly in the scrotum and continued up through his body and through his heart, likely killing him moments after he stood up and stumbled toward the door. Lance Moeller was later sentenced to 10 years in prison for his neighbor's bizarre accidental murder. The 1985 film Mask is based on the true story of Rocky Dennis, an American boy with an extremely rare bone disorder. It causes bone to build up excessively in the skull, resulting in compression of the brain. Doctors initially told him he would die before his 7th birthday, but Rocky ended up living to the age of 16. After being told he would die if he didn't change his habits, a morbidly obese Scottish man went an entire year without eating any food. The 450-pound 27-year-old only consumed multivitamins and potassium tablets for 382 days, only going number 2 once every 40 to 50 days. He set a record for the longest fast ever recorded and ended up losing 275 pounds. French chemist Antoine Lavoisier wanted to perform one last experiment before he was executed in 1792. He told his colleague he would try to blink as long as possible after being beheaded by a guillotine. Some sources say he continued to blink for up to 10 seconds afterwards. In 2002, Pennsylvania mother Brenda Heist completely disappeared after dropping her 2 kids off at school. 11 years later, she was found living with a group of homeless people in Key West, Florida. Investigators found out she was upset about an upcoming divorce and wanted to completely abandon her life as she knew it. Brenda survived by living under bridges and eating scraps of food until she got tired of running and decided to turn herself in. Her family wanted nothing to do with her since they thought she'd been dead for years, and her ex-husband was even treated as a suspect for her supposed murder. Just last year, 16-year-old Marie Antoinette Coutillo tragically died after her phone fell into the bathtub while she was on a call with her friend. She'd been charging her phone while using it and apparently dropped it in the water at some point, resulting in her electrocution. Marie was eventually found unresponsive by her parents and rushed to the hospital, but doctors were unable to save her. When Pocahontas was 12 years old, she would entertain white colonists by doing cartwheels without wearing any clothes. This is actually one of the few things we know about her that's indisputable thanks to so many written accounts. From the 40s to the 70s, many Ivy League colleges, including Yale, Harvard, and Princeton, required all incoming freshmen to have nude photos taken of them. Administrators claimed it was to gauge the rate of diseases like rickets and scoliosis, but many believe the true reason behind them was much creepier. Most of the photos have since been destroyed, but thousands still remain in the Smithsonian's possession. In 1940, Walt Disney hired 11 little people to dress up as Pinocchio and wave to people at the movie's premiere. He left them on a theater balcony with enough food and wine for the day, but there was no way for them to get down. By late afternoon, they had all taken off their thick, sweaty costumes and were naked, drunk, and swearing at innocent parents and their children. An X-ray revealed that a 300-year-old Mexican statue of Jesus has real human teeth. They're believed to have been donated by worshippers as a way to get closer to the religious figure. After killing his girlfriend with a hatchet, 30-year-old Philadelphia man William Kemmler became the first person to be executed by electric chair. While it was supposed to demonstrate the effectiveness and humanity of electrocution, the punishment went horribly wrong. They underestimated the amount of electricity needed to quickly and painlessly end a man's life, so Kemmler was still conscious after the first shock. When physicians noticed he was still breathing in agony, they hit him with a second shock that was more powerful, causing his entire body to convulse violently and start smoking. Kemmler ended up with bubbling skin, melted eyes, and a foaming mouth, and the entire room reeked of burning flesh as many spectators ended up passing out from the horror. But despite this, the electric chair would still continue to be used for more than 100 years afterwards. Violet Jessop was a ship nurse in the early 1900s who couldn't seem to avoid disaster. She was on the Titanic when it sank, the Britannic when it was struck by a torpedo, and the Olympic when it collided with another ship. Violet managed to survive all three. Exactly 50 years after America was established, on July 4th, 1826, President John Adams' last words before passing were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." Little did he know, President Jefferson had died just a few hours earlier that same day. This woman adopted an elderly dog because it looked exactly like her dog that ran away when she was a child. A microchip scan ended up confirming that it was her old dog. On New Year's Eve in 2011, a suicide bomber planned on blowing up Moscow's Red Square with a mobile phone bomb. But her plan failed miserably when the phone received a spam text wishing her a happy new year. This caused the bomb to detonate while she was still at the safe house, and she was the only person who died. In 1999, skydiver Joan Murray's parachute malfunctioned, causing her to fall from 14,000 feet directly onto a mound of fire ants. But doctors think the shock of adrenaline from 200 fire ant stings kept her heart beating and saved her life. 112 people died during the construction of the Hoover Dam. The first to die was surveyor J.G. Tierney on December 20th, 1922. On the same exact day, 14 years later, the last person died during construction. It was J.G.'s son, Patrick Tierney. In 1979, Elvita Adams tried to cease her own existence by plummeting from the Empire State Building. She leapt from the 86th floor but was blown back onto the 85th floor by a sudden strong gust of wind. In 1991, a woman from Thailand accidentally slipped in the mud, grabbed a live wire, and was electrocuted to death. Later that same day, when her sister was showing the neighbors how the accident happened, she slipped, grabbed the same live wire, and was electrocuted to death. This is the harrowing skull of a man with Proteus syndrome, a rare and awful condition characterized by the overgrowth of skin, organs, tissues, and bones. Nikola Tesla originally expected to live to the age of 150, but later lowered this estimate to 135 years when he was forced to give up alcohol due to prohibition. He thought that consuming alcohol was good for the body and was a heavy drinker as a result. Tesla ended up dying at the age of 86. When revolutionary hero Guy Fawkes was convicted of high treason in 1605, his punishment was to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, meaning he would be hanged almost to the point of death, have his intestines and sex organs removed while still alive, decapitated, and have his limbs torn off. After the sentencing, Fawkes said "fuck that" and leapt from the gallows so that the rope broke his neck and killed him immediately. The drawing and quartering was still performed on his corpse, and his body parts were paraded around London.